Hello all and welcome to episode 38 of Project Geekology, where we're going to be talking all about Revenge of the Sith, episode 3 in the Skywalker saga. This is a movie that is near and dear to both of our hearts, and I'm sure many of you who are listening now, for a number of reasons. It's definitely one of the better, if not the best of the prequels, and it's easily the hardest one to watch in terms of, emotional stakes and, the actual events that need to occur for the original trilogy to happen the way that it does happen. So we're going to be talking all about the ins and outs of Revenge of the Sith, but my name is Dakota, and I'm joined as always with our co-host,
Jedi Master Anthony.
You're on the council, Anthony, but we don't grant you the rank of master.
That's not fair!
Oh, Anthony, what have you been up to this past week?
Well, catching up on some shows, like What If. I've been trying to catch up on that for our episode next week, and of course watching Revenge of the Sith. I mean, I've seen that, I feel like, thousands of times, but yeah, I always like to get a fresh watch in for our episodes, and just anime, man. All sorts of anime.
You finished Visions yet, or no?
No. I've other anime, but I need to finish Visions though.
Yeah, it's when I tell you that Visions is one of the coolest things that Lucasfilm has released in years. I really mean it. I've been making a Visions video for the past week, and I'm nearing completion, and I'm just like, wow, this is such not only a cool video on my end, but the source material that I'm taking the clips from and the ideas from, all the stuff that they did in Visions, all the different studios that created their own offshoot stories, has just been so fun. There's not one that I dislike. There are, obviously some that I prefer over others, but each one is something that I could easily see an offshoot television show for, and I love that. It's a really cool show. What are you thinking about What If now that you're catching up on it?
What If is, it's an interesting show. I think I've read a couple of What If comics. So it's not, I guess it's not all that surprising, because you know that some of the stuff is possible. Like that first episode, I mean, we've all, I think most of us have heard about that concept of Peggy Carter, Captain America.
Right.
And I've even I've seen people cosplay that. So
I've seen it too.
But it is cool seeing it in an animated media instead of it being still frames on a comic.
What has been your favorite episode that you've watched so far?
Man, that's a good question. But you know what? I think I'm going to save that one for next week.
That's fair. Okay. All right, and I'll do the same. Yeah, I'll do the same.
Although I'll save that one for next week,
There's a couple that I'm like, those were really good episodes.
I know, it's a battle.
I'm actually behind. I haven't seen this past week's episode, and it's supposedly the best of the bunch. So I'm very looking forward to that. But don't worry, I will have watched it and maybe watched it again for our show next week. So I'm excited about that.
And watched it a third time for yourself.
Yes, and for Geekritique and finding a timeline placement, I go crazy with that kind of stuff. You know what drives me crazy?
Have fun with that timeline on Visions, bro.
No, the Visions timeline is actually really fun. I'm really having a good time with it. There's only 9 episodes. There's only so much room for placements. Some go before the original trilogy, some go before the prequel trilogy, some go after the sequel trilogy, and it's all right, so realistically, what are the notifiers for me to tell what is chronologically before or after? Is technology more advanced in one story versus another? Are Siths more present or prevalent in this time period than they are during the Skywalker saga, or whatever? There's a bunch of little signifiers that I think I'm pretty close to getting a realistic chronological viewing order. So I'm excited about that.
Yes,
But-
yes. So I haven't been doing too much, and you talked a little bit about what you're doing as far as videos, but is there anything else that you've been up to?
Before you volley it over to me, I want to hear your thoughts on Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Because I know you saw that yesterday. And Venom is, I think we're going to touch on mild spoilers here. So if you want to skip ahead like 2 minutes, feel free. Go ahead, Anthony.
So Venom, Let There Be Carnage definitely lives up to its name, because there's a lot of carnage, and I don't mean just carnage, but just the idea of carnage and craziness, you
mayhem.
know, mayhem. And so my thoughts on it are, it wasn't amazing, it wasn't spectacular. Don't go into that film thinking like, man, I'm gonna watch some, you know, Marvel cinematic masterpiece. I mean, because that's not what it is. Really what it is you're going in and just really having fun.
Okay.
And
yeah,
it's in the first one is a fun watch, and this one's a fun watch too. Woody Harrelson really does tap into those like crazy characters pretty well.
right.
If there's any of you that haven't seen it and are planning to go see it, and especially you, Dakota, watch for the end credits, because the
I know,
end credits.
I've already seen the end credit, actually. That's
Oh,
the only
you
thing
did?
I've seen from the movie, yeah. Besides trailers, I have seen the end credit scene. So skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want to be spoiled by this. But dun dun dun. Tom Holland's Spider-Man is featured in, on a TV screen. Whether that means that the multiverse has opened up for Venom, or Venom has always been in the MCU, we don't really know yet. We're going to have to wait till No Way Home. I think there's going to be some crossover there. But we'll see. Sony's finally getting their way.
Which I think that it would be pretty cool, because I don't hate Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock. I think that he does it pretty well. I mean, you know, I'll be a little awkward at sometimes, but like I don't completely hate it. I don't think it's as bad as Spider-Man 3's Topher Grace.
Okay.
I don't know, and I think that Tom Hardy's a little bit more built like Eddie Brock.
Yeah, for sure.
And like the chemistry between him and the symbiote is actually like pretty funny. Like they have this like kind of like bickering back and forth kind of thing going on, and it can be pretty funny.
All right.
And so yeah, that's just a little bit about Venom. I didn't want to get too much into spoiler territory, just in case if there's some of you out there that want to go and watch that movie. So what have you been up to?
now I technically have to watch these movies, so
I mean, it is. I mean, I do think it's pretty cool with that end credit, though.
I'll give it a shot. I mean, I have to, but yeah.
Now you have
Anyway.
to. You
Now I have to.
You legally have to, as the Marvel timeline specialist.
I know.
With that
I'm
end.
gonna have to. I'm planning on watching all the old Marvel movies, like from before Marvel Studios, like the Spider-Man 3 and the Amazing Spider-Man and the X-Men movies.
Those X-Men movies, at least the first two were really good.
Yeah, and then you have like Days of Future Past. That was really good. Logan is fantastic.
Yeah, Logan
But
was great.
Then you have a lot of duds, but whatever. Well, that's a conversation for another day. Daredevil, classic.
Ben Affleck, Daredevil.
Somewhat classic. Anyway, as far as what I've been up to this past week, I can't actually remember. Oh, actually, there is something I'll talk about. Andy Serkis, the director of Venom, Let There Be Carnage, by the way, he also is
Gollum.
the narrator. Yes, he's Gollum. We spoke about Andy Serkis's performance ad nauseum in our 6-part Lord of the Rings podcast series. So,
if you want to hear more about that, go listen to that series.
yes, believe it or not, it is like collectively 1 minute longer than the entire extended edition.
1 minute longer than That's crazy.
It's exactly 1 minute longer than the extended edition.
We beat that.
we beat you, Peter Jackson. Your move.
We've officially talked about Lord of the Rings longer than it actually is.
Yes. But he is narrating the Lord of the Rings audiobooks.
Oh.
Yeah, so they just released it, I think, like a week or two ago, and it's been the case where he had done the narration for The Hobbit like last year or something, but now he has, or not he specifically, but whoever the publisher is for Lord of the Rings, I can't think of it at the time. They released all 3 audiobooks with his narration, and he does a fantastic job. He's really good at finding character voices. He's not necessarily trying to mimic the actors from the movies' voices, but a lot of times that bleeds into his interpretation. Like for Pippin, he has a very like Scottish accent, kind of like Pippin in the movies, you know? So it's kind of stuff like that. And Gandalf has a very gruff voice and, you know, a very Ian McKellen-y. But other characters like Frodo, he kind of takes his own liberties with. Yes, I haven't gotten to anything with Gollum yet, but I'm really looking forward to seeing if I'm sure he goes back to his like Smeagol voice, and I cannot wait, dude, for that to happen. So I'm making my way through that. I know, right? Why would you do that, Andy Serkis? So I think that's all that I want to talk about today. Looking around my room to see if there's anything. Oh, we've been watching Twin Peaks: The Return the past couple weeks, I think. Yeah, the past couple weeks, and it's actually been really interesting. It's a fantastic.
It's like a revival, right?
It's a revival, yeah. So one of the weirdest coincidences, and maybe it's not a coincidence, in a TV show. There's like this weird alternate world within the Twin Peaks universe, like a parallel existence, where the main character is told by some person who was supposedly dead that I will see you in 25 years. And then, lo and behold, 25 years later, the show returns to TV in Twin Peaks: The Return, and they pick up that storyline. Dude, it blows my mind that they were able to actually do that and get most of the main cast. Like, it's 95-ish% returning characters. So that's really cool. It is very scary on occasion. Like, the first episode was like it's probably the scariest TV I've ever seen.
But is it as scary as Over the Garden Wall?
Yes, it definitely is. It is definitely a lot more scary than Over the Garden Wall. But it's weird because the whole show isn't like that. The series as a whole, Twin Peaks, I wouldn't consider a horror show, but there are elements of it that are just base fear horror. Like it's interesting, and I have a lot of respect for David Lynch for what he's able to accomplish. Again, I have no idea if the show, because it's 18 episodes, I think I just finished episode 8, which was like a weird experience.
And what is that on?
Amazing. I had to buy it. It's on Showtime. I don't have Showtime, so I just bought the Blu-ray. But it's not streaming anywhere else. I think you can get it on Amazon Prime, but you have to buy it. So I might as well just buy the Blu-rays, and that's what I did. So anyway, that's what I've been up to this past couple weeks. It's been an interesting journey. I hope to get some actual answers in terms of Twin Peaks lore and questions that they raised in the original show and stuff. Yeah, well, one thing I will comment on, because I don't know that we'll ever have like a Twin Peaks episode or whatever. I'd love to do that at some point, but the music from the original Twin Peaks is just absolutely gorgeous. Angelo Badalamenti, he is a fantastic composer, and they brought him back for this show, but I've noticed that his score is muted. Like it's just become a modern thing in like TV shows and movies to not have a loud score backing a good portion of the actual film or whatever. But in the original show, like, there was always music playing, and it was always like a charming, it's almost like video game music. You don't expect to ever hear it stop.
Oh,
but it's like going back to play a Mario game, and it's just kind of like silent, and all you hear is like the footsteps as he jumps on, blocks and stuff. So it's kind of weird in a way.
That would be weird.
It was a little jarring at first, but anyway, I like the show. I'll report to you when we finish it. We still have like 10 episodes left. But anyway, let's get into the meat and bones of today's discussion.
The nitty-gritty.
Revenge.
The sad.
Of the Sith. Yes, the nitty-gritty, the sad. The revenge of the Sith.
And this is pretty relevant. I would definitely like to have an episode on Clone Wars, because that last season runs concurrent with this movie, and they talk a lot about things that are happening that you remember during the movie, and there's a lot of stuff that happens in the behind the scenes of the movie that you see in Clone Wars. There's a lot of like emotion behind it, and there's a lot of like really cool stuff. So one day we should definitely cover Clone Wars and kind of jump
I'm
back
totally
to this
down.
a little bit.
Yeah, I'm totally down. So I'm still making my way through Clone Wars. Season 7, is that entirely based on the Revenge of the Sith timeline, or is it? I thought it was the last 4 episodes.
So
that
part of the season is just before Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
And then it hits. Then it starts running concurrently with it, and it gets.
I think I saw 2 of the episodes. Yeah, I saw the duel with Ahsoka and Maul. That was pretty cool. But anyway, yeah, I would love to do that. I'd love to catch up and discuss that in maybe not its entirety, but like maybe the 7th season we'll do an episode on or whatever.
Too bad you didn't get to see that while watching the show. I think it hits a little bit better when you're like watching it while you're watching the show instead of like outside of the actual show.
I don't know what you mean.
Because you said you saw the duel, right?
Oh yeah. My brother Noah was watching the final season, and I just kind of sat down and watched a couple episodes with him.
That choreography though was really good. They did motion capture.
Right, yeah, and I really respect that, especially for, just it's an animated show. The fact that they had to, or that they didn't have to do that, but they chose to do it to make it better, which is pretty cool. I love that kind of stuff. So, Revenge of the Sith. It begins at the very end, or the tail end of the Clone Wars. This has been a massive galaxy-sprawling event that has been, just charged between the Separatists and the Republic. Dooku and General Grievous have been, taking worlds for the Separatists and for the Trade Federation, and it's basically it's almost like a civil war within the galaxy.
Essentially, it is, and it's funny that they call this era they call it the Clone Wars. I mean, for obvious reasons, and then they call at least I don't know if they've changed it since, but I know for the longest time that during the Empire. The reign of the Empire, they called that war a galactic civil war.
Yeah, I actually think it's a little bit reversed, because you are correct. I'm not saying you're not. But the battle between the rebels and the Empire, they call that the Galactic Civil War. But really, the bigger Galactic Civil War was the Clone Wars.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
Right, because it was between seceding planetary systems, and the Republic, essentially, and so yeah, that really was the Civil War. I would call the rebels and the Empire, that was more of like an uprising.
Yeah, so maybe it would be better to call that the Galactic Uprising or the Galactic Usurping or something like that. But
right, because I mean, it was just like really like everyday people that kind of got thrust into becoming soldiers.
And the rebellion wasn't, I mean, it was an army like altogether, but it was a small army comparatively to everything that the Empire had.
I mean,
right, versus what they had in the Clone Wars with the Trade Federation and all of their droids, and the Republic and all of their clones. This was just a war on another scale entirely, and it wasn't just fought on single fronts. Like within the original trilogy, we have, other battles going on, like in the comics and stuff, in some of the games that take place during that time period, and the books, but the big battles are all featured in the films, and they're all very centrally located in a specific sector of space, or like above a planet or above a moon or something like that. So I agree that should not be called the Galactic Civil War, even though technically the rebels were seceding from the Empire's grasp, but it's a less defined name for it, I guess, than it would have been for the Clone Wars or whatever.
Right. Like, well, so what it kind of reminds me of is like something along the lines of like, the American or the French Revolution. There's this governing power, and the smaller people. There's a small group of people that were like, "Yo, we're tired of this. We don't want this anymore."
You're totally right.
It really was a revolution.
Yeah, Galactic Revolution. I like that a lot better than a Galactic Civil War. I'm going to bring that up to Pablo Hidalgo at some point.
But I do like the Clone Wars, though. I like the sound of the Clone Wars, and so we can keep that, even though it was a Civil War.
The thing with the Clone Wars is they had to have called it that, because we had Obi-Wan in Episode 4 talk about how, your father and I fought in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool that they were kind of shoehorned into that, but it could have also been called a Civil War, and it was. But whatever. We start this episode with a nice little sequence, and it's always with Star Wars, it always starts with a look out on space, and it's always a unique.
Right after the crawl.
Yeah. It always ends in stars. Yeah, and even though Rogue One didn't have a crawl, but yeah, Rogue One did that as well. And I don't remember Solo. I can't remember.
Neither can I.
I don't think it did. I don't think Solo did.
I don't think it did.
I think it started with like a engine igniting or something. Because, yeah, I think that's how it started. Anyway, so we see two Jedi starfighters in sync. It's almost like a ballet in the sky, as there's just like a massive war over the skies of Coruscant. And
that's actually one of my more, like, I actually like that intro probably the best out of all of them.
Of the prequels?
Of the prequels, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that it definitely, well, it's exciting, When it comes to The Phantom Menace, it had a very not exciting introduction. It took a long time for even the Jedi's lightsabers to light up, and, they're talking about, like, negotiations and stuff, which is not something exciting for children, even though it's a children's movie. And then the second one, what did Attack of the Clones do? I can't remember.
It was Padme going to Coruscant.
You're right, and actually that one was a little more exciting because the moment she got there, like, her ship was blown up.
Right. But this one
she had a decoy.
I really did enjoy this one because, you later find out that it's Obi-Wan and Anakin, that they're really like flying in sync with each other. And they're flying, and it's calm at first. It's just them flying. Once they fly around one of the ships, then you see like that massive battle, and it's a massive battle not just anywhere. It's above Coruscant, like the heart of the Republic, and they've got this massive battle in the sky, like right above them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I love the banter between them. I love I love this era of friendship between Obi-Wan and Anakin. They're both just they're best friends. They've grown up with each other for, all intents and purposes, because, Obi-Wan started training Anakin when he was still very young. I think he was like 19 or something. So it was definitely a lifelong thing, especially for Anakin too, because, he matured into being Obi-Wan's right-hand man. And I like that they are equally skilled in this movie. And we'll talk more about that once we talk about the lightsaber duel at the end. But they're both on par with one another.
Right. Yeah, in this one, Anakin is no longer a Padawan. He's a fellow member of he's a Jedi Knight in this one. So
yeah, for sure. And we're going to be talking a lot about his descent into darkness. And a lot of people kind of criticize the movie for how quickly he decides to switch, but I don't think it was a quick thing.
No, it wasn't at all.
No, and people, I think there's a lot of religion in this movie, or at least religious themes and ideas, and the idea of like an apostasy from the Jedi, or like moving away from your tenets or beliefs to do your own thing and living a double life, that a lot of people who have never been in a religion or never been devoutly religious don't understand. They don't see it as something that could cause you to think differently or to remove yourself psychologically from your beliefs. And that's exactly what Anakin was doing. We'll talk more about that later. But we're starting to see, even early on, that he's removing himself from Jedi principles. And
Right. You see that in Attack of the Clones.
Right, yeah, you see that in Attack of the Clones. He lets his anger rule him. He starts killing the Sand People with abandon, and
right, and then this romance with Padme starts to blossom.
Yeah, and it may be wrong, and it's not entirely clear if the Jedi are wrong in this respect or not, because we don't truly know the answer in terms of what in the Star Wars universe this entails. But the idea of having no attachments is a protection, at least according to the Jedi, from being too passionate, to being too blinded by love. And we see this to be the case as we continue. But so Anakin and Obi-Wan, they get onto General Grievous's ship, and we find that the Chancellor has been tied up, supposedly, and Dooku is guarding him. They duke it out.
Yeah, they duke it out. They duke it out with Dooku. That is a nice flashy clash between the three of them.
Yeah, I think it is interesting that I think in Attack of the Clones, both of them were handled pretty easily by Dooku, and that was partially because Anakin was hot-headed and he jumped into the fight before, actually considering Dooku's strength with a lightsaber and skill. But in this one, they're very quick to, let's do it together. I was just going to say the same thing, or something like that.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, let's talk about how well Christopher Lee just plays these villainous characters.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah, he is a legend. And you can tell he just eats up roles like this. He loves it.
I mean, once upon a time he played Dracula, so
yeah. No, he had a storied career.
He really did, and we talk a bit about him during his time in Lord of the Rings, and definitely him as Count Dooku. He plays that character very well.
Oh, absolutely. So it gets to the point where Obi-Wan is incapacitated during the fight, and it's just Anakin and Dooku. And Anakin finds a way to sever both of his wrists, which, Dooku takes in stride. I'd probably be screaming, but he's just like shocked, like, oh. And then Palpatine is instantly like, now kill him. He doesn't want.
Yeah, no, and then you hear that the Darth Sidious voice, the do it.
Yes, yeah, the anger, the hatred inside him starts to bubble forth, and I think there's multiple reasons as to why he's telling him to do it now, because Dooku knows the truth about Darth Sidious. Dooku knows who the Chancellor is, and
you see the look at him, right?
Yeah, Dooku's like, wait, what? You're not going to help me? And that's when he realizes that he's been betrayed for someone that Palpatine has been grooming for years.
I mean, and he really had been. I mean, since really kind of since the first movie, but you see it a little bit more so in the second one. And
it's interesting. He actually does say that I've been looking out for you ever since you got here. Speaking of Coruscant, which means that since he was a kid, Palpatine has been right there, whispering in his ear. Like all, subtle things to just get him to start thinking negatively about the Jedi teachings. And that's another thing. When it comes to religious ideology, it's so easy to start negatively thinking about what you believe in if someone is believable, or like if someone has the mindset to make you or corrupt your thinking about what you believe. It's very insidious, and it almost seems like they're just talking.
Darth Sidious. I mean, there's a reason why he went with that name.
Yes. Yeah, he's literally insidious. He's a slithering creep, and he's just giving these little lies to you as and they're not necessarily lies. They're like almost half truths, but he's like talking about them as like, oh, they're so old fashioned.
He's good, man. He's subtle.
He's subtle.
And I gotta say, man, Ian McDiarmid, bro.
Yeah, Ian.
So good, man. So good. He's been doing this. He's been playing that character for a long time, Yeah, man, he did really good. Something that I did want to kind of talk a little bit about, and it's more of like a joke than anything. I saw a meme online where it shows Obi-Wan saying, him saying that Sith Lords are our speciality, and it just shows him lying on the floor, like in both the scenes where they fight Sith.
Yeah, actually, that's hilarious because Sith Lords really aren't his speciality. I mean, I guess when it comes to his experience with Darth Maul, but at that point he's not a Sith Lord. He's just an angry guy with the dark side on his side, basically. Anyway, yeah. So he ends up beheading Dooku at the request of the Chancellor, and immediately he's just like, I shouldn't have done that. That's not the Jedi way. And we see him like start to question himself a little bit, but even the Jedi around him, like even Obi-Wan, thinks it was a good thing, and that already shows like how the Jedi have been corrupted over this long war.
Right, and then you actually see that corruption a little bit in the books. The books kind of showed a little bit more, like Dark Disciple.
Oh yeah, Dark Disciple.
They go to send your boy to go assassinate Count Dooku, and that's something that's not the Jedi way. But they're like, we have to do what we have to do.
Right. They send Voss to assassinate Dooku alongside Ventress, and there's a big discussion early in the film, or early in the book, as well as later in the book, like, is this right? Should the Jedi be executioners? And the answer is no. Obviously, they're Jedi. They should not be this involved with with politics, and B, with dealing out punishment. That's not their goal. They're peacekeepers, So they twist that logic for the roles that they're thrust into, which is generals in this war.
Right.
And it's such a fascinating like betrayal of their own ideology and beliefs, and you could tell some of them see it. Like Yoda definitely doesn't approve of a lot of what they're doing, but I think everyone's just so blinded and clouded by the dark side at this era that they don't even see that even though they think that they're doing the right thing, they're slowly playing into Sidious's hands. And
I mean, there's a couple moments in this film where you see some anger from the Jedi too. Right.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest anger is from clearly Anakin. When he's not added to the council, and there's so much, and you can actually. Sorry for those of you who are listening, but I keep going back to like the religious aspects of the Jedi Order, but a lot of it is on display in this movie. You know, the way religions work or the way they're organized, and you do have a hierarchy usually, whether it be in like a congregation or an organization level. And when it comes to the Jedi Council is like, these are the people that are making the decisions for this group, for this creed. And the fact that Sidious, or I should call him Palpatine for now, he's weaseling his way into what they do because he has the power to do so, and them not going along with it just plays into his hands even more and corrupting Anakin's view of what the Jedi are all about. But Anakin should have the foresight to realize that this is not what the Council wants. They don't want someone from the outside making decisions for, what they do on the inside.
Really, and that helps actually him with the Senate too.
Yeah, absolutely. And dude, this guy was playing the long game from even before.
Patience, dude. I mean, for a Sith Lord, man, that guy's got he has the absolute like best of patience. Like it's crazy because you see the Sith Lord or the Sith Lords throughout these films, and he's the most unlike the rest of them.
Oh yeah, like
because
even when
Palpatine plays the longest game. I mean, we see with the sequel trilogy.
Right? Yeah.
He plays the longest game. Oh my gosh, dude. It's gonna be, we're definitely gonna be laughing when we get to the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, as much as I love the sequel trilogy, there's a lot in it that's just like, what were they thinking when they wrote this? But we'll get to that way down the line. We got a lot of other stuff to cover. I think we still have to cover like we wanted to do the anthology films before.
Yeah, we can do. Yeah, I definitely want to be able to go over Rogue One, because I do think that Rogue One is the best anthology film, even though that there's only two.
yeah, that's funny. No, Rogue One is fantastic, and I do like Solo. It's just not my flavor of Star Wars generally.
Right, it wasn't as bad as people try to make it out to be.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, we're rambling a little bit, but
that's what we do here at Project Ecology.
Welcome. Glad you're with us.
But yeah, no, back to the film.
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily need to go scene by scene, because we're talking about the concepts of the story,
right.
As a whole. And I think it's actually a more interesting conversation than just going scene by scene, in this instance anyway.
You can pick out some here and there,
Yeah, so when it comes to Sidious's long plan, let's talk about that for a little bit, because he clearly, when he's talking about Darth Plagueis the Wise in the Opera House, that's another scene where he's just poisoning Anakin's mind with falsehoods, or maybe not falsehoods, but different ideologies, and like tricking him into thinking that this ideology is superior to the other. And he's talking about the Sith and how one Sith found the ability to
just to keep people from dying.
Which is something that Anakin has talked a lot about over the years. You know, even in Attack of the Clones, after his mother dies, he says something along the lines of, "I'll never let anyone die again." You know?
Right.
And he believes even then that with his powers, he should have been more powerful enough to keep his mother from dying. But now he's in the position where he's having visions of Padme losing her life in childbirth.
Right. Like he has this gift of foresight, but he doesn't have. He's not clear on what it is, and really, at the end of the day, he could have avoided all of that had he done the right thing. But yeah, really, with Palpatine's long game, I mean, you see it in Phantom Menace, where he plants that seed of, you know, to vote for Padme to vote for no confidence in Valorum. You know, he kind of squeezes his way in there, but he plays very coy about it, but you know, it's all in his plan, and you start seeing it more and more. And at this point, they talk about how he's been in office way longer than his term was supposed to be.
Right, yeah. So when it comes to, let's talk a little bit about his history. You started with that, you know, like the vote of no confidence in Valorum. He was a senator for Naboo before
right.
that, before he was a chancellor, before he even seemed to want more power. And there's what book is it? I think it's like Queen's Peril. Yeah, it's Queen's Peril. It's the E.K. Johnston book that talks about Padme Amidala in the first 6 months of her time as queen on Naboo, and she's constantly dealing with Senator Palpatine, who is, you know, he's always gracious, you know, he's always trying to seemingly do the right thing, but he's always kind of absent when you need him. And it's interesting because they never say that he has alternate plans, but you see that he does. You know, he's always trying to fit things in to his own agenda, and that they do that really well in the novels. But when it comes to the movies and Clone Wars as well, they show him slowly start to take power from different areas, and you know, with the vote of no confidence for Chancellor Valorum, and then, you know, he seems all surprised that he was chosen as Chancellor, but he knew that he was he was clearly next in line or whatever. And then in episode 2, when the Clone Wars start, he votes for emergency powers as Chancellor to you know, he basically works as a lesser emperor at that point in the galaxy during the Clone Wars.
Right.
And his term of office lasts a lot longer than is usual for the Chancellor. And yeah, by the end of Revenge of the Sith, we now see him turn the Galactic Republic against the Jedi. And, you know, everyone is in agreement. Everyone is okay with them getting rid of, you know, the peacekeepers that have kept peace for thousands of years for the sake of this guy who's been spreading lies for however long his political career has existed, you know? And he basically just takes power. He introduces First Galactic Empire, and, you know, it's scary, but you can kind of see how that happens in actual countries, you know. And this is based on a bunch of different real world instances. But when it comes to, you know, recent history, the easiest thing to think about is maybe World War I and World War II,
yeah.
And, you know, the Nazi Party.
Yeah. I mean, that was a huge influence, at least in the original trilogy.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about my boy, Anakin.
That he's been believing in Palpatine's loveliest of lies.
Yeah, he's falling hook, line, and sinker for all of them. And it's sad that he ends up choosing Palpatine at the end of the day. But there are a number of things that had to happen for him to fall into that route in the first place. And the first happened in Attack of the Clones, when he and Padme decided that they were going to not only have an affair, but also, because Jedis do occasionally have affairs, they just don't go any further with them, because attachments are what is, attachments are the things that the Jedi say lead to the dark side, in terms of, your passions becoming too pronounced. But when it came to Anakin marrying Padme in secret, that goes to show, and that goes to show that he was willing to lead a double life, because the Jedi Council would never accept that, and so on. So what you see in Revenge of the Sith, even at the start of it, like after they get back from beheading Dooku and everything, Anakin slips off like into the shadows to meet up with Padme.
Yeah.
And it's a very clear double standard or double life that he's living. And Padme is just, she's clearly blinded by love as well. She has she's emotionally compromised in more than one way too, because now she is carrying a child, or she doesn't know it's two childs, but she thinks that she's carrying a child. So she's in the throes of love right now. She doesn't care. She doesn't care about like her position in the Senate or if that will be affected or anything. She just wants to be happy with Anakin, and that's fair. I feel bad for her ultimately.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is Anakin at this point living with her?
It looks like it.
But it's clearly her living space, because
right.
Obi-Wan knows that is... Obi-Wan visits Padme in the morning at some point, and then and Anakin's like, Obi-Wan's been here. And that kind of got me thinking, like, how does Obi-Wan not realize that Anakin is living with Padme for so long? And I don't know if he's like living, or he's staying there some nights or what.
Probably.
But it's something like that.
Yeah, I can imagine it being that.
Where it's because he's clearly like living a life in secret, against the Jedi Order's wishes. And the fact that he is so upset when the Jedi Order deny him the rank of master, even though he's actively, living a double life, just goes to show how far he's gone down that path, because he's already not thinking like a Jedi.
Dakota, it's an outrage.
It's an outrage. There's never been someone on the Jedi Council that isn't a master. What are your thoughts on the relationship with Padme and Anakin?
It's not normal. You can tell that...
Well, what do you mean by it's not normal?
I don't know. It's just like, it seems too honeymoon, like, all the time. Like...
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, actually. The fact... Because they seem to only touch upon important issues. And when they do, they kind of brush it off to go back to being lovey-dovey really quick.
Yeah.
Because they're in the middle of a war. The war's coming to a close. They're talking about... And Anakin starts spewing, like, political ideas that are totally abhorrent to Padme's character. This is the character who is fighting for liberty and justice, and she has a very specific viewpoint on the galaxy and how it should be run through democracy. And he starts talking about doing away with democracy, and by the end of the film he's totally on board with that logic, and yet she doesn't seem to give that any weight. And I think that's what you mean by, like, they're in the honeymoon phase. Like, she seems to be blinded by love to the point where she doesn't realize that he's saying things that are totally against her whole person. I don't know how to say
right
it.
Right. Yeah. It really, yeah, it's just, she really is so blinded, because you would think the fact that they're both like living this double life would bother her, And
yeah, that's a thing. Like, I feel like, and she says it in Attack of the Clones, we'd both be living a lie. And you can totally see that in Revenge of the Sith, she's like totally stuck in a lie. She's pregnant. There's nothing else that she can do to, avoid that lie at this point. So it's almost like a state of denial that it seems like she's in for the entire episode. I don't know if you also caught that or not.
Yeah.
I also feel that because so much needs to happen in this episode, so much needs to happen in convincing the audience that Anakin has gone down this path of darkness. And, you know, not only is his faith in democracy shaken, he now believes in an empire. No longer is not only is his faith in the Jedi shaken, he's now, you know, on board with being a Sith if he can save lives that he loves. The movie needed to go and explain all of this, and also like end the war. They needed to kill Grievous. They needed to show the downfall of the Jedi Order. It almost feels like a bullet point of scene by scene, like this has to happen now, this has to happen now, this has to happen, and there's no breathing room in the movie. No. And I think that's partially why I always kind of like, I have a hard time enjoying it, even though I recognize that it's a fantastic movie. But like, I love the breathing room in Star Wars movies. I love the little moments where characters are just being themselves, you know? But you don't have that in this movie because it's wartime, and because so much needs to happen. And it's still a really long movie for a Star Wars movie. So I guess that would be like my biggest criticism of the movie, is that there's no time to breathe, no time to smell the roses, if you will, because so much needs to happen in the fall of the Jedi. And then, you know, and there's still stuff that, because of all that, it felt really rushed and it wasn't completely developed, that the books and these like cartoon series have really helped fill in a lot of blanks. I would like to read the novelizations for the prequel trilogy, because I've heard that the novelization for Revenge of the Sith is one of the best Star Wars books around, and so I think that would be a really interesting, you know, thing to read and like learn more about, like the intricacies of like what's going on in everyone's head and everything. So I'm looking forward to checking that out at some point. But let's continue. Obi-Wan also seems to be like in a state of denial when it comes to Anakin, because he's grown up with this character, he's raised this character, and he doesn't want to believe that Anakin has gone to the dark side. And I mean,
he cares.
I wouldn't either.
He cares a lot about this character as a brother.
He wasn't
as a family.
Yeah, he wasn't lying when he said that you were my brother, Anakin. And that's one of the hardest lines in the movie to like witness, because jumping to the end of this, Anakin's like, he now has all 4 limbs chopped off at this point. All he has is a mechanical hand. He's trying to climb out of a pit of fire. He starts burning up. Anakin's like, I hate you. And Obi-Wan's like, you were my brother, Anakin. And that is one of the hardest things to just watch and appreciate, because you can easily appreciate the fact that it's said and everything and it's believable, but it's hard because you love the characters, you care for the characters, you don't want to see Anakin go down the dark side path, but you need to if the story plays out the way that it has to. You know,
are we gonna get a Star Wars what if?
I think that was kind of what Visions is. Even though, so is there going to be a what if? I don't want to say that I have insider information, but I have information that leads me to assume that something like a what if is going to happen. And the idea is basically that there's been a rumor going around in the past couple weeks that they're going to be doing a original trilogy reimagining sort of thing, where they take the original scripts of Star Wars. I think the second draft of Star Wars, which was I think at that point called Journal of the Wills by George Lucas, and the original artwork done by Ralph McQuarrie. I don't know if you guys have ever checked that out, but you should definitely check out the Star Wars art done by Ralph McQuarrie. And they're thinking about reimagining the Star Wars trilogy through that lens. Like, instead of Luke Skywalker, we'll follow a character called Starkiller. That was Luke's original last name. So stuff like that, and we'll see the events of the original trilogy play out through those creative lenses. I don't want to say why, like, I think that is definitely happening, but because I don't know for a fact that that's definitely happening. But
it would have been cool
just
to see stormtroopers
connecting those dots. Yeah.
It would have been cool to see stormtroopers with like maybe vibro blades or something like that.
I think we'll be seeing that in like a what if Star Wars thing pretty soon. Yeah. But we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that'd be cool. Oh,
we're talking about Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, we're talking about Revenge of the Sith. Can't wait for that Knights of the Old Republic remake though.
Right, yeah, actually. And also the original game is being ported onto the Switch.
Yeah.
So I think I might grab that. Jen seems to be really interested in it. It's a game I've actually never played.
It's worth it. It's probably one of the best Star Wars games I've ever played. The story's really cool. The twist was really awesome. I just think that it was absolutely one of my favorites growing up.
I'm excited for all that's coming, like with Star Wars. There's a lot that we have to look forward to, and a lot that we don't even know is coming. So, yeah, that's going to be fun.
Yes.
When it comes to Obi-Wan, you feel bad for him. For everything that Anakin puts him through and puts the galaxy through. Obi-Wan is one of the characters you feel most bad for. Probably Padme is on that level as well. And to an extent, Yoda, because of all that he has seen lost in an instant. Throughout his like 800 plus years of life.
Right, and you see how it affects him too in that scene.
Yeah, he's diminished. Let's talk a little bit about Yoda for a bit. After the fight with Sidious, not that he has lost per se, but it was kind of a tie thing where he didn't. I'm assuming that Yoda didn't think that he was going to win or whatever, so he ended up fleeing and getting a ride with Bail Organa. But by the end, he seems older than he did at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, it's something about the way he's carrying himself. It's almost as if, oh no, he actually does say, "I have failed." And to him, what has he failed exactly? He's failed the entire Jedi history at this point.
And he feels that weight.
And he feels the weight of it because he's the oldest person on the council. He's the oldest Jedi in existence. He has helped all of these individual Jedi grow to the Jedis that they have become. And now they're all gone. He and Obi-Wan are seemingly the only ones left. And imagine that weight. Like, I've seen hundreds of years of Jedi gone in an instant.
Yeah, man, like, because he was there, man, bro, High Republic.
Yeah, he was there long before the High Republic, too. Like,
yeah.
he was an old Jedi in the High Republic. So
that man is old. That alien is old.
And he's seen a lot of Jedi come and go. So that's a tough scene. I love Yoda, though. There's something about his wisdom and everything that is just perfectly suited to Jedi morals and Jedi tradition. And I think that he is one of the more... He's a character that's one of the more... Like, he's more of a stickler for tradition. And I understand that reasoning. You know, when you have an older person who's been doing something for a long time, they want to keep doing it a certain way.
Yeah.
But Yoda, even like going into the original trilogy, he has ideas carried over from his time with the Jedi Council and his Jedi history that he trains Luke to do that are very much based on tradition instead of what the story necessarily requires or whatever.
Right.
So it's he's an interesting character. You feel terrible for him, but because you kind of have to go down this train of thought, like, was he responsible for, or partially responsible in any way for Anakin's betrayal to the dark side? Were the Jedi teachings too strict for him? Like, if the Jedi teachings weren't as strict, would he have gone to the dark side? He probably thought about that. He probably, came to those conclusions while he was in the wilderness or whatever.
Well, I mean, yeah, because when you think about a Jedi like Qui-Gon was one of those Jedi that bumped heads with the Council too.
Right.
He was.
Yeah.
I mean, he was one of them guys that he did his own thing too. And there's other Jedi also that the High Republic talks about that's very experimental with their use of the Force and stuff, and even the Council doesn't really agree with that, you know?
Yeah, it's actually interesting because it seems going from the High Republic era to the prequel trilogy, because I've read all the High Republic books up to this point, and I've obviously seen the prequel trilogies plenty of times. The Jedi in the prequel trilogy are more dogmatic than the Jedi in the High Republic trilogy, or not the trilogy, but the series.
Yeah, there was a lot
High Republic,
more like freedom of. It seemed like there was more expression in the High Republic
of the Force. Yeah, expression of the Force, expression of like self, expression of all that. And by the prequel era, it's a lot more dogmatic. So there's a type of Jedi in the High Republic era, which is 200 years before the prequel trilogy, that is called a way seeker, and it's basically a Jedi that just is more of like a gray Jedi that just kind of allows the Force to guide them wherever it wants to go. You just meditate into the cosmic Force and you go to whatever planets the Force is telling you that you should be going to.
Would that be
That's
Elzar?
Not something that exists. No, Elzar isn't a way seeker. There are like...
But Elzar is experimental, right? With the Force?
Elzar is a very experimental character, but there are characters that are just more lone samurai-ish, I guess you could say. And that's kind of what I can equate it to or whatever, like a lone wolf type character. But those Jedi are no longer in the galaxy by the prequel era, at least as far as we know.
Right.
There are no Wayseeker Jedi. Is that because the nature of the Force has changed, or is it because the nature of the Jedi has changed? And I believe it's the latter. I think the Jedi Council has, for whatever reason, closed the doors on those broader expressions of the Force. We don't know why at this point. Maybe some of the Wayseeker Jedi or whatever go to the dark side or rebel against that, and then they decided that they were going to tighten up or lock up what they were going to do.
Which is really interesting because, at that point, they really put the Force into a box.
Exactly.
And so that, that I do believe that is, one of the biggest reasons why there's the downfall of the Jedi. They put the Force into the box, so really they blinded themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's partially why Yoda feels that he has failed, and we have characters like you mentioned Qui-Gon. He's probably the closest thing in the prequel trilogy to a gray Jedi before Ahsoka, and he was probably the closest thing to a Wayseeker, honestly, based on like what I've read. But again, he butted heads with the Council,
right?
And so on and so forth. So I can only imagine that the Jedi Council did become, like I said, more dogmatic, and that definitely didn't jive with anything that Anakin had going for him. He was very free with whatever he wanted to do with his life. And although he didn't make that clear to even his brother in the Force, Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan didn't realize that there was like that much of a relationship between Padme and Anakin.
Yeah.
By the end of this film. So there's a lot to break down. There's a lot of like different motivations and stuff that are just so fascinating in all of these things. Do you think that, I don't want to touch on Legends at this point, but going from what we know of Darth Sidious and Darth Plagueis, do you think Darth Sidious killed Darth Plagueis?
I do.
He kind of hints at it, right?
Yeah.
Although he doesn't say that Darth Plagueis was his master, he did say that his Padawan learned everything from him and killed him, and then he gets this like cynical grin on his face.
Right, and he kind of mocks Darth Plagueis also by saying how it's ironic that he could save others from dying but not himself.
Right. Yeah, I'm curious about the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise and like how he learned what he learned to save others from certain death. And spoiler for Star Wars Visions, Anthony, the final story involves a dark side user bringing someone back to life. And I wonder if Darth Plagueis learned that from a character like the one that we see in the short Akakiri. I think her name is Masago. She was a Sith who brought someone else back to life. I think it's a fascinating idea, and maybe Darth Plagueis did come to learn that like ancient knowledge or whatever. I don't know. I think that's interesting.
What about Ben does that in the sequel trilogy? Remember when Rey was dead?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so he has either found or unlocked that knowledge as well. But we'll talk about that.
Right. Like what we think exactly what that was, and
yeah, because I think that's something I want to like. I haven't rewatched Rise of Skywalker in a couple of years at this point, so I want to.
Yeah, it's been a while.
A little over a year anyway. So, yeah. What else? Let's talk about Anakin's destruction of the Jedi Temple. Well, actually, he discovers that Palpatine is the Sith Lord.
Right.
It's a really interesting discussion, He basically... Palpatine prompts Anakin by nudging him throughout the movie about like all the wrong things that the Jedi are doing, or all the ways that they're not listening to his commands as the Chancellor, or they're not obeying what he's doing. And then he starts like seeding these ideas that they're going to come and turn on me, or they're gonna ask you to spy on me, or this, that, and the other. And some of it ends up being true, like the fact that the council wants them to spy on the Chancellor and stuff. So Anakin's seeing these half-truths through the lens of a dark side user, and that just opens his mind up to having no faith in his own beliefs at that point, by the end of the war. Yeah, by the time that Sidious confronts him and tells him that he's actually, the Sith Lord, and that he's been taught everything that his master taught him, and that he can save lives through the power of the Force that the Jedi won't teach him. He does the right thing in telling the council immediately.
Yeah.
He leaves and tells the council. That's the right thing to do from a Jedi perspective. So he still has his teachings there. He still has everything in order. But his reservations about losing someone he loves are also strongly entrenched. And
and possibly
he wants to believe,
and possibly losing somebody who can help him with that.
Yes. Yeah, you wanna talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Immediately, Anakin goes to the council and lets Mace Windu know that he believes that Palpatine is the Sith Lord that they've been looking for, because he knows about the dark side, and he knows the ways of the dark side. And so Mace Windu, he's like, all right, well, we're gonna have to go after him, And so he goes and gets a squad. Anakin offers to help, but Mace Windu senses that Anakin is confused.
Yeah, so one thing I really like about what they were capable of doing with the Jedi Order is giving each master their own perspective on like everything that's going on in the galaxy. They're not just like a singular organization that's like hive mind, let's all do the one thing. A lot of times it's Mace Windu who's the stubborn one, and a little more aggressive, that he butts heads with other council members, but he's also one of the more respected council members, and that's always something that's kind of like confused me a little bit, because
I've always felt that Mace Windu towed the line with anger.
Oh, he totally did. Yeah, no, he totally did. And you have people like that. You have people like that in real life who are just more stubborn or more like sticklers for rules or dogmatic in certain ways, or berating you with certain like codes that they abide by always. And then you have more people who are a lot looser, like Obi-Wan is, you know, he's more willing to joke around, he's more willing to do this, and Yoda, who's more willing to talk in proverbs and think about other sides of the argument. But Mace Windu is he's a straight edge kind of guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that doesn't really work with the Jedi personality. But in this instance, this one instance, when Anakin brings it up to him, there's compassion for Anakin. I see it. I don't know if you caught it this time.
Yeah, you do.
He's worried about Anakin.
Yeah, I was like, you see the concern there.
Yes, obviously it's a very concerning situation. The fact that a Sith Lord is ruling the galaxy at this point, and he's just like, we have to work very quickly if it's gonna
right. And you see the concern for Anakin too, like, hey, you know, stay here. I sense that you're confused, so you know, essentially, like, this might not be the best situation for you to be in.
Yes. So Anakin stays behind. Obviously, he doesn't want to. Anakin wants to be there to make sure that he's brought to justice and not executed. But at this point, and I think even though this is not the Jedi's way, I think it was fair for the Jedi to go out and try to kill this guy. You know, they weren't trying to bring him in. They were trying to take him out. And I'm going to side with their line of reasoning on this one, just because he's in a place where he is just in too much power.
Right.
Like power with the Force, power with the galaxy, power over the troops, power over the Jedi. He's got power everywhere.
And it was he wouldn't. The thing is that at the end of the day, had they arrested him and, you know, brought him to jail or whatever, really, the same thing would have happened. The same thing would have happened. They would have been like, look what the Jedi are doing. They're attacking me. They're coming up with these accusations, you know. And he had that power. So really, they would have had people angry at the Jedi and wanted to take the Jedi out. I think that at the end of the day, whether or not, like, if they tried to assassinate him, or they tried to assassinate him, but if they tried to arrest him, they would have lost either way. That was the only way. They had to take him out.
And at this point, he had already set the chess pieces exactly where he wanted them. He had the clone troopers exactly where he wanted them. He had the Jedi exactly where he wanted them. And most importantly, he had Anakin, who, you know, he has been grooming since he was a kid. He had Anakin exactly where he wanted him. Whether or not, or how he knew about the visions that Anakin was seeing, whether it was him giving him those visions, or if it was him being connected to Anakin and also seeing those same visions, we don't know. But the fact that he knew about the visions, even since Anakin didn't tell him, he was in a unique position where he had access to all the cards in his hand. He had access to all the cards that the Jedi had, and he had access to the cards that Anakin had. You know, he was playing a multi-dimensional game, and he won. He had already won by that point.
Yeah, man, he was a chess master.
Yes.
So as we know, that assassination attempt didn't go as planned. Anakin didn't stay put, and, you know, because Anakin knew that they weren't going to arrest him, that they were going to take him out, and his resolve for saving Padme was so strong that he was like, man, I'm going to need to stop them. And that's what he does. He ends up cutting off Mace Windu's hand. And
can we just talk a little bit about like how easy it was for Palpatine to kill 3 Jedi in like the span of 5 seconds? Like, he killed Ithkoth, Saesee Tin, and Kit Fisto with a few thrusts of his lightsaber. Like, they didn't see it coming. Somehow they didn't even fight back. They just took it like champs.
I know. I know. It's like, dang, y'all suck. and especially with like how popular. Remember how popular Kit Fisto was?
Yeah.
And he's not even a good fighter.
I think he is. I think that scene was poor choreography, because they didn't actually show a lot of sparring between Jedi. It was just very close-ups of Palpatine, like jabbing his sword or his lightsaber through different
Making
Jedi.
really weird faces.
He's just like, yeah.
He really made some weird faces when he was fighting.
Weird faces, weird noises. He was Palpatine.
Yeah, the sound he makes when he like spins. He sounds like he's like possessed or something.
He's letting out all that anger that's been built up for decades. Air. Clearly.
Oh yeah. But yeah, no, and like the only one that really like stood a chance was Mace Windu, and I think that Mace Windu was about to take him out. Mace Windu was there.
Oh yeah.
Mace Windu was strong enough to face off against Darth Sidious, and if it weren't for Anakin, he would have completed that task. He would have taken him out.
Yeah, freaking Anakin, man. So the fact that Anakin has essentially taken out Mace Windu, allowing Sidious to kill Mace Windu, or presumably kill him by throwing him out the window of a 1,000-story building,
into the pits of Coruscant.
Anyway, yeah, the fact that he did that was the final step that needed to happen, and then that's why Sidious was like, unlimited power, because he realized at that point that was it. That was the final step that needed to happen. Him winning over the Jedi.
Was it? No, he just used a cheat code for unlimited power, and that's how he got it.
Yes, and it's actually pretty crazy because up to that point, his powers were only limited by the Jedi. Like he already had full access to the Senate. He already had pretty close to full access or like power to the Jedi Order. He was even able to like get Anakin into the council and everything and spy on them from within. But now that he has killed several members of the council, he is able to have Anakin on his side and everything. This guy has full power now, and that's how I interpret the unlimited power. Not that he's gained more power in the Force, but there's no power left to hold him
or
back
no Force.
in the
Yeah, and so yeah, it was in that moment like where things like really do start getting depressing.
Oh yeah, after that point, there's no.
The movie gets like a lot like the movie gets a lot darker.
Yeah, no, it just instantly turns to just depressing and hard to watch.
Yeah, man.
That third act is a hard movie to watch because you have Anakin go immediately over to the Jedi Temple and start
killing younglings.
Killing younglings. That's got to be all right. So the scene where the youngling or Anakin like finds the younglings in the council members' chamber. Think about that for a moment. I want you and the audience to think about the fact that there were a bunch of younglings hiding behind masters' chairs. Why were they there? It's because they knew that the temple was under attack, so they went to the masters for protection. And there were no masters there to protect them because they were off fighting random battles across the galaxy. So how sad is that those poor kids, barely Jedi, just barely Force sensitive use.
Dang, dude. Oh my gosh, that's like another move that he did. He has this war, everything's spread out. He was counting on all these masters being out so that the temple.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, dude! Like I didn't even think about
Yoda
that, bro.
Yoda was on Kashyyyk.
Yeah.
We had Kiadi Mundi on Felucia or whatever, Saleucamai maybe. I don't know.
No, was it Ayla Secura was on Felucia?
Yeah, she was on Felucia.
I think Barriss was too.
Oh, maybe, yeah. Was she? Maybe. I don't remember. But anyway, all the Jedi were out. All those poor kids hiding behind the council members' chairs, thinking that that's the safest place that they can be. And then Anakin shows up. Oh, council member. Good. immediately like lights his lightsaber, and like the kid in front is just like takes a step back. Dude, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That is the fact that they put that in a kids movie. I remember when that came out, like it was a big deal. Like there were like mothers were boycotting the movie because it was so hard to watch, and it is. You know, you don't ever want to see it.
Yeah. You and I saw the movie together. Like it was you, me, and your family. We all went.
Yeah, I remember that. That was like a matinee showing over at the falls in Florida. That was fun.
Yeah, so let's talk, because I know we're getting towards the end of the movie, but something that we've been talking a little bit about, but Order 66.
Yeah, interestingly, I never noticed this before, but it seems that Palpatine, that is, gave. I always assumed, for whatever reason, that it was a singular order to all the clones, execute Order 66. But it seems in this movie that I guess I must have missed it before. He gave individual orders or individual calls to different clone leaders, like he did to Commander Cody, and then to other clones on wherever Kiadi Mundi is, and all these different places. It wasn't just a singular execute Order 66. He planned it in a way that it was, I don't know, more personal. I don't know why, but whatever, he did.
Right, and you know, for the longest time, you know, until the Clone Wars came out, you're kind of thinking like, wow, you know, I understand following your leaders, but, you know, how was it that they're so easily able to, like, you know, turn on the Jedi like that? And then especially when you start watching the beginning of the Clone Wars and you see that the clones develop a relationship with the Jedi, you're even more so like, man, like, how did they do that? Like, they're like friends, you know? Like, you see that the clones have like personalities, and, you know, they're all the same person, but they're all different in their own way. And
that's one of the things that I love the most about the Bad Batch is that they really explore Order 66. They really explore what that means for the clones. They explore how some clones are defective, like you know, the Bad Batch are like different breed of clones that for whatever reason the chip doesn't work on them.
Right.
But they see everyone around them suddenly turn on the Jedi, and it's just like a bizarre thing. But Bad Batch really covers that era really well.
Right, and that's what I was leading to. That it made so much more sense that you find out that they have this inhibitor chip in their mind, you know, in their like brain.
Yeah, in their brain, yeah.
So that they really can't ignore that order. And I'm telling you, season 7 of Clone Wars is really like, it's heartbreaking, because you feel that feeling that you get from you know, remember that feeling you had from Revenge of the Sith, you knowing that this is it, knowing that this is all gonna go down right now. Yeah. That's how Clone Wars was that last season, because, you know, you're like, okay, we're in Revenge of the Sith, we know what's gonna happen. And, you know, it's just you dude, you gotta finish it. You have to finish it. That last season is spectacular.
Of course I will.
You've heard it here first. You know, Dakota hates the Clone Wars, but, you know, I'm forcing him to watch it.
But I love Bad Batch. Yes, I do.
No, but yeah.
Right, so let's close out our discussion.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go back to Revenge of the Sith and finish this movie.
But yeah, no, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. You know, where my confusion was, and then when I when I realized why it was so easy. Right.
Okay. So let's set the galactic stage. You know, the Jedi are being done away with. That is one of the pawns, or that's one of the pieces that Palpatine has knocked over.
Right.
Finally.
That he needed a.
He set the board. Yeah, he set the board up in a way that, like, all sides were gonna lose so that he could win. You know, the Republic needed to fall, the Separatists needed to fall, the Jedi needed to fall. All of these pieces needed to be put in place. So he sends all the Trade Federation people to regroup on Mustafar. It was a separatist world, so you have all the, like, the Geonosians, the Neimoidians, you have Wat Tambor over there. You have all the Trade Federation people congregating in that area. We also have the Separatist leaders Dooku and Grievous, recently killed. We have the Jedi dead. Now he sends Anakin over to Mustafar to deal with the Trade Federation. You know, this whole faction, like he's created multiple factions to basically engineer warfare, only to kill off all of them, so that he can take over. And it's genius, you know. And once you realize like the genius of Star Wars and the genius of like the plotting that went into the background of it, it's a really cool thing, you know. Like, I mean, obviously it's a really cool thing regardless, even if it was nonsense, but it's not nonsense, you know. There's a lot going on worth discussing and worth thinking about that Lucas did think about when he was making these films. Not only on like a spiritual sense, like with the Jedi and the Sith, but on a political scale and a galactic scale. He's really, it's almost like his entire ideology boiled down into a universe, and it's cool, you know?
Yeah.
I really love Star Wars. Every time I watch Star Wars, I'm just like, I love this, you know?
Yeah.
It just speaks to me on so many levels, and it frustrates me when people, you know, say that like, oh, it was just the Jedi Order that made Anakin fall to the dark side. No, it's not just that. He abandoned the Jedi Order. He was seduced by the dark side. He was given prophecies that only the dark side could potentially fulfill, or whatever, like with Padme's eventual death, and so on and so forth, with stuff like that. So there was a number of things that had to happen, and the fact that he had already abandoned the Jedi path anyway. Yeah, he was living a double life. He wasn't a Jedi strictly, you know, at that point. So there's a lot more to Anakin. He's a very conflicted character. He's one of the most dynamic characters in movies, I think,
and a tragic character.
You go from being, oh yeah, totally. You go from him being a slave boy on Tatooine to learning the Force, to becoming a Jedi, to becoming a Jedi Knight, to then falling to the dark side, becoming this monstrosity, this Frankensteinian monstrosity, Darth Vader. No. And then and it sucks, man. Yeah. He's a lesson in you know, not doing that. Whatever he did, don't do it.
Yeah, man. What did you think about the duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan?
I will say that occasionally it's very over the top, like excessively over the top, but I think it's worth it, because it's not even just about how proficient they are at lightsabers. It's not just about how skilled they are as Jedi or how much they can wield the Force. It's an emotional struggle. You know, it's the climax to their relationship as brothers in the Force. You know, they grew up with each other.
Right.
This isn't just two enemies duking it out. It's two people who deeply love each other, who care for each other, who don't want to see each other doing whatever the other is doing. And yet it's almost, it becomes a dance at a certain point, you know, like that they need to express to, you know, eventually end in Obi-Wan getting the high ground and Anakin losing 3 of his limbs.
He did, man.
What about the fight speaks to you?
You know, the I think it's the thought in your mind that you're just like, man, earlier in this movie these guys were allies, but they're fighting each other, and you can tell that Obi-Wan is fighting in a way to not kill Anakin. I don't think he's trying to kill Anakin. Why do you think that he cut off his legs and his arm instead of him in half, you know?
Yeah.
But Anakin was so blinded, and you could see how blinded he was with that exchange where, you know, Padme goes there and he thinks that that Padme brought Obi-Wan, but really Obi-Wan snuck on board without her knowing. And
Obi-Wan did Padme dirty. You know, I mean, he was right to do so because it led him straight to Anakin. But I feel bad for Padme for a number of reasons. There's so much to feel bad for Padme in this moment. She doesn't want to believe that Anakin has the ability to kill younglings.
Yeah.
I think she deep down she knows it's true.
Yeah.
But she doesn't want to believe it, and she has to see it for herself. And the fact that he is already speaking of the future in terms of we can rule the galaxy together means, and it goes to show that he's already decided that power is what he seeks. He lusts for power at this point. And he's taking it from wherever he can get it. And he's even saying, like, I'm going to betray the emperor at this point, or the chancellor. And it's a fascinating thing because it just goes to show how backstabbing the dark side is.
Yeah.
You know? They're always one-upping each other, or trying to.
Have you ever played the Revenge of the Sith video game? Did you ever play it?
Oh, I did. I don't remember that.
Okay,
I don't remember too well.
So when it gets to the duel, you can play it twice, in which you're playing as Obi-Wan, and then you're playing it as Anakin.
I don't remember that. That's cool.
So obviously you're playing as Obi-Wan. It plays out just like the movie, but when you play as Anakin and you win the fight, it's almost like a what if. Anakin does betray Palpatine and strikes him down in a scene.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. That goes to show you that, like,
He
I'm sure
was
they
going
spoke
to.
like,
He would have
Lucas.
done it.
Yeah.
He was gonna do that. He was gonna be like, I don't need this old man. And at the end of the day, he does kill Palpatine. Just a long time later. So I do like the fact that, like, Palpatine, like, realizes, like, Lord Vader's in danger. He goes over to Mustafar and he just sees Anakin as a burnt toast wreck, and oh man, he's just like, I've just like toppled the entire galaxy just to, like, let this guy fail. And you know, he's been raising this guy to be the greatest thing that's ever happened, and now, like, his force abilities are going to be stunted a little bit because he's going to be half machine. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
And that thing, that like medical stretcher thing that they have Anakin on, they're bringing him to the medical facility, and it's like raining on him, and every time I see that scene, I'm like, man, that must hurt.
Yeah. No, what I don't understand is, like, they kept him awake during their, like, surgical procedures, and he's just, like, screaming on the table, and you see his eyes, like, bulging as, like, the helmet is, like, lowered onto his face, and you just, like, man, this is just cruel. This is cruel and unusual.
There's that's the real reason why he yelled out no.
It is heartbreaking, though. Like, after all of that, he was the one to kill Padme.
Right.
know?
Yeah. The vision came true, but he didn't know it was because of him. He thought it was because of, just regular childbirth.
Yeah. We didn't speak about it, but earlier in the film, he sees his second vision, but this time Obi-Wan is with her as she dies. And this, like, just gets him so angry. But anyway, so let's close out the film by talking about, like, the last couple scenes. We see Lord Vader and Palpatine and Tarkin as well on the bridge of a Star Destroyer looking over the work that's going on for the Death Star. That's a cool scene.
It is. How much time do you think has passed until that moment?
Not a lot. I still think that
Yeah.
I still think that that's relatively recent after the movie.
Right, but I don't think it's. I don't think it's like a month or two after. I think some time has passed, just not like a crazy amount of years.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't know per se, but we do know that they were working on the Death Star plans.
Yeah.
Even before the Clone Wars, so that was already in progress by the end of Revenge of the Sith, for sure. But yeah, it seems like there was a lot going on in terms of the construction of the Death Star space station. So yeah, I don't know about that. But obviously the next couple scenes of the twins being separated. I love the fact that, you know, what are we doing with the daughter? Oh, we'll take her to my paradise planet where we've been wanting a daughter. What about the boy? Put him on a desert. You know, the one run by the Hutts and the one where his father was a slave. That's a good idea.
Right. Or let's bring him to a planet where slavery is rampant and gangsters run it.
Crazy.
Yeah, no, for real. You know, actually, something I was kind of thinking, like, what do you think? Like, why do you think that the Trade Federation would want to go through with the idea of a Death Star? Because really, they seceded because, you know, they didn't think they were being treated fairly, and, you know, there was issues with the whole tax and all that. But, like, do you think that really it was to the point to where they wanted to build a machine to, like, destroy planets?
Well, when it comes to everything that the Trade Federation did, it was taking over worlds with an iron fist, you know? Because literally almost, I don't know if it's iron, but it might be steel, you know? They were working with droids. That was their entire army. So they, you know, we saw that first on Naboo.
Yeah.
There was the blockade, and then they invaded Naboo with a bunch of droids, and we saw that all throughout the Clone Wars. As far as whether or not they wanted a device that could kill planets, we don't know, because remember, it wasn't the Kyber technology for all of this wasn't implemented until very late in the game by Galen Erso. If you ever read the book Catalyst, I forget who wrote it, but Catalyst is like the prequel novel to Rogue One. It talks a lot about like how Galen Erso came up with the idea that you can use Kyber as like a super weapon, and they implement it in a way to upgrade the Death Star to that extent. So I don't know if they already had plans to make it like a world-ending super weapon, or if that was implemented later on in the game.
Maybe it started off as like a super space station for the Federation, you know?
Yeah,
That's
possibly.
True.
Yeah, it could have been a docking station. Could have just been like a hub of commerce. I don't know what they wanted. But anyway, that is our coverage of Revenge of the Sith. Any final words, Anthony?
Yes. I can't wait until we talk about Revenge of the Jedi.
Yeah. Before we close out, we want to read a nice comment that we received over on Apple Podcasts. Again, if you want to review any of our content, please be sure to leave a nice review, and we'll be sure to read it on here on the podcast. But this one is from Louis H. Choco. Sorry if I got that wrong, but you titled it Absolutely Worth a Listen, and you said, "It's so great to have a podcast that can dissect down to the minimal details the content that has shaped so many of us through the years. Would love some more anime discussions. This truly makes my commute to work an entirely different experience, because I even feel as if I can join in and be a part of the dialogue. Y'all are amazing." And that's the latest review that we have on Apple Podcasts. But if you would like to help us out, please be sure to give us a 5-star review and let us know your thoughts on the show and like what you want to see more of. There's definitely more anime coming.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We've already been talking, and I have made it a point that I do want to talk more about anime, and I know that Dakota does too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love anime. We grew up on like Toonami and Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon and stuff. So Pokemon, all that stuff. So we're going to be talking more about anime in the future. We already have plans to talk about the entirety of Cowboy Bebop in a couple of weeks. So be sure to check that out just before the Netflix show drops. So we'll be sure to cover all of that and more in the future.
Yes.
But thank you all so much for listening up to this point. Please be sure to visit our socials and let us know your thoughts on Revenge of the Sith. We want to hear if you also enjoy this movie as much as we do, or if you have any thoughts about what we said about Revenge of the Sith that either rang true for you or didn't, because we'd love to continue the conversation online. So thanks for everything, guys. Please be sure to catch up on What If for next week. It's the Marvel show that's currently airing on Disney+. And we'll be sure to discuss all the episodes, all 9 of them, next week. All right, guys.
Alrighty.
Have a good one.
Peace.